Hi, my name is Jonathan Rove, and I'm an employment attorney. And today I want to be going over what is my wrongful termination case worth. So essentially, I want to just kind of build this with you all to talk about a frequently asked question, which is, what's it worth? I just got fired for a wrongful reason, and I want to see if it is worth it for me to litigate this case. So the first question that I want to ask is, what is a wrongful termination? It's the simplest way to explain it is that it's a termination that's wrongful, meaning that a termination that's for an improper purpose. So, but when we get into it, I want to start by saying, what is wrongful termination not? It's not, uh, you know, uh, being mean, not being overly critical, not being uh, high stress. Nothing of that nature. What it is, it's a termination that's against the law. Now, this goes into a vast amount of categories, subcategories, but we'll talk about two main categories, which is common law wrongful termination. And this has to do with things like complaints of payroll, safety, other legal violations. And then there's Fair Employment Housing Act, which we call FEHA, wrongful termination. That's your discrimination, retaliation, could be harassment related, and that's based on some sort of characteristic, whether it's race, religion, um, gender, sexuality, sexual orientation, things of that nature. That's what a wrongful termination is. So when we're calculating damages for a wrongful termination, the damages go into various categories. So we have past and future pain and suffering, which we call non-economic damages. And then we have what's called economic damages, which are damages that you can calculate that are economical. Those would be lost earnings, medical expenses, um, things of that nature. So there are other these are the main damages. We also have what's called uh, punitive damages. Sometimes there's liquidated damages based on if there's some sort of wage and hour component like unpaid wages. So this is essentially what it revolves around. Then a big driver of these cases are attorney's fees. So we have various statutes from the Labor Code, from the Fair Employment Housing Act that authorize attorney's fees in many of these situations. Not all of them, but many of the situations. So if there's attorney's fees statutes in the wrongful termination case, then that will cause for the defense to say, look, we need to pay more attention to this because it could be on the hook for a lot of money down the line. And then there are various other factors that tend to value the case. These are things like how big is the company, their ability to pay. Is there employment practice liability insurance? A lot of companies don't have that. So when you're going after smaller companies, they really don't have the money to pay off these wrongful termination cases. Bigger companies would have more of an ability. And the EPLI, is there EPLI? How much is left? Because on an EPLI, the more that the insurance company pays the defense attorneys, the less coverage that there is. So if there's $1 million policy, but they spent 250,000 on attorney's fees, then you only have 750,000 left. I mean, it's a lot of money still, but it's just giving you the concept of what it is. Uh, is there prior criminal history? Does the plaintiff have certain prior criminal record that a jury might hear about? It's doesn't kill a case by any means, but it's just a factor to play in. Um, has the plaintiff treated for psych injuries for emotional distress? So it's incredibly important for a plaintiff to treat with a psychologist or a psychiatrist, even a therapist, but preferably a psychologist or psychiatrist regarding their emotional distress so that they could bring in that kind of evidence to show what their damages are. Because without that kind of evidence, you're coming in to say, I have extreme anxiety and depression, but I never saw someone for it. So the jury might not believe that. So is it a jury or an arbitration or bench trial? So a jury tends to give more for emotional distress than a private arbitrator. In many cases, a person signs an arbitration agreement with their employer, so they're forced to go to an arbitrator and they waive their right to a jury trial. Um, other stressors in your life, excuse me, other stressors in your life, if a person is going through a divorce at the same time, or if they are having extreme marital issues, or if someone in their family has died, then that would be a, a sign for the defense to say, well, it wasn't really the wrongful termination that caused the stress in the life, the emotional distress, but it was actually all this other stuff in their life that had caused it. And I would say the two most important factors are one, documentary evidence, and two, witnesses to support your claim. So documentary evidence, what's that? For a disability case, that would be proof that you gave a doctor's note to your employer, to your boss, or that you gave a or that you complained about payroll issues in writing, and you still have copies of that. So that's why we always recommend using your private email address or private cell phone to text or email that. Do you have witnesses to support your claim to say, hey, I was there for this complaint, or I was there for this discussion about the complaint, or I was there when the boss said you're fired because you're complaining too much about this stuff? Those are two incredibly important factors. I would say those are the two most important factors. Just to go briefly, I just want to discuss what is lost earnings. I want to go back to economic damages for lost earnings. So that is going to be the earnings that you would have made except for this termination. But you have to show that you are at least trying to look for work. So you got to keep copies of the applications that you file, that you sign or submit. You want to take screenshots of that. You want to take screenshots of any any interviews that you go on, any scheduled interviews, just proof that you were actually looking. We would recommend like at least once a week that you're looking for something. Got to come up with that documentary evidence as well. Otherwise, you might not be entitled to this. And this can last for a long time. So if you're making 50,000 a year and you're out of work for a year, then you could be entitled to $50,000. So that's a important aspect of it. Um, in terms of attorney's fees, this really depends on who your lawyer is. Do they have a track record for being able to bill a certain amount? Do they have court approved amount that they're able to bill? That could be a major driving factor in these kinds of cases. Um, and that this is pretty much a good overhead of how these things are calculated. In terms of non-economic damages, past and future pain and suffering, that really has to do with what impact did the wrongful termination have on your life, and how well are you able to prove that? Are you able to bring in medical experts? Did you treat? Did you uh, perhaps bring in a family member or a spouse to say how impactful this was? Did you have to take care of little kids at the time to show the high stress of the situation? Were you forced out of your place as a result of the termination? Things of that nature. So these are the ways that you go about seeing how much it is worth. And please list your comments, questions below. I hope this is helpful. And then we will catch you on the next video. Thank you.